everyone. This is Tim Nearing of Redfire. We are going to talk about the Scythe fleet today. This is a part of the field guide video series about talking about ships and their fittings, so that we kind of know what the fits are and likely fits by region, so that when we go into a fight, we kind of know what to expect. There's nothing worse than getting into a fight and not understanding what a ship's fit like, and you die to something and you don't even understand why. So this is trying to help you prepare for that. The Scythe fleet is a very misunderstood ship in the game. There's a lot of different fits. And a lot of different fits, especially by depending who's flying them. It's a lot. You can expect things very differently from solo players to nano gang corps to like self-holding alliances. They should all be fit very differently. So let's just jump in and kind of get started here. This by far is probably the most common fit these days for the Scythe fleet. This is a dual prop fit. You will see these most likely from self-holding alliances on their undock. The purpose of this fit is to be very fast, very tanky, and to basically click approach ram scram someone that's either like a nano fit or a solo player. The reason why this is effective and the reason why it works so well is it's just tanky enough to get on top of the person you're trying to ram. And the Scythe fleet is crazy fast, and you'll be able to get there, hold scram, and then either pull off or, whatever, maybe die, I don't know, or tank, or just straight up tank them with your ancillary shield booster. So just going over the fit, the low slots is pretty straightforward. They just want double nano for speed, and then in the mids, obviously MWD, and the really most important thing to note here is it has the usually fit XLASB, and then like an invuln. Then you have the scram and then the compact afterburner. The way it's flown is that usually someone will just straight up click approach you, and they'll be going, as you can see, at 4K heated cold with no links, no snakes, no anything. This ship can easily get to 5K with off-grid links or whatever, or even with implants and stuff like that. But still, 4K is insanely fast for a cruiser. Especially with no help from links or anything like that. And once they're on top of you, they'll just use their AB and just stay on top of you, just basically orbiting you 500. This is really, really dangerous for most DPS ships that we fly in small gang, because things like an Oracle or whatever won't be able to kill this thing by the time it closes the entire gap. This thing will go from 100, 60, 40, 30, you're dead. So you need to be very vigilant when these things show up on grid. You either need to defensive scram them, defensive web them, or do something to them to prevent this from happening. The good news is that they're really not that hard to kill, especially if you have something like double Oracle. But if they're not taken seriously, they will ram scram either your DPS, or especially Oracles, this just comes to mind, or even worse, your support frigates. It's really, really embarrassing to lose a Karis like that, and once they're scrammed, there's really no getting them free again without straight up killing it. And while this thing can tank with its booster running 700 something DPS, it's going to be a tall order to get this thing dead. And this thing doesn't have to last long, it just has to get there in time. So this is a really common fit that you might see from any time you go to like a null staging system or something like that, or in some sort of just like kitchen sink response fleet. This is probably the Scythe fleet that you're going to see. I want to go over a fit that I actually don't really see much anymore, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, but this was a fit that was popular more so in low sec. This is like a dual rep solo fit. I've never flown it, but I've seen a lot of people fly it. If you armor fit it and you use 2 reps, you open up all your mids for whatever you want. These days maybe that would be an AB there instead of a second web, but it's worth mentioning that this fit exists. Sometimes if you see a solo player that you're ganking, you might come across someone that's using this old 425 autocannon fit. There's a lot of variation here, and to be honest, it may not even look like this anymore, but this used to be a fit that I used to see a little bit more often. I hardly see it anymore, but it's worth bringing it up. It doesn't tank very much, but it is well equipped to handle small things like, our Enyos, or it's well equipped to handle things like, T3Ds and whatever if you get rammed. It's very well equipped to kill sweeples with selectable damage, and it's double webs. This might be a fun fit just to try out if you just want to mess around the Scythe fleet with autos. But in general, the one you'll mostly be seeing is something that we have in core fittings, which is a lot more standard. Let me start by saying that this fit is not the end-all be-all fit of the Scythe fleet. It definitely needs, right off the bat, I would change things about it, but this is probably your most basic bitch fit that you can get for the Scythe fleet. So let's just kind of go over its slots again. The lows are pretty fucking obvious. After that, in the mids, and there's a lot of variation you can do in the mids. The mids is obviously just some shield tank with a point and a quad lift MWD. I think that the cap booster on the Scythe fleet is completely necessary. I think Chesser's totally wrong in his anti-support video where he talked about how you don't need it because you're going to pulse your MWD. I think that's a pretty classic Chesser out of cap fit, and I don't think it's acceptable to fly without a small cap booster. I think you can be way more aggressive with a small cap booster, which exploits the bonuses of the Scythe fleet and how fast it truly can go. When you have a small cap booster, you essentially can just perma run your MWD at this point, which means you can be going 2.6 cold, 3k cold with links, a 24/7, and be able to get points all the time. This is pretty critical because one of the big reasons to be flying something like an Orthrus or Scythe fleet is to run in and get point, and that's one of the best things about it. So I don't think it's acceptable ever to lose this. Something I do think you can be able to change up though is you should be thinking about whether or not you really, really want to have 2 LSEs or not. You can go 1 LSE and go point scram, and then open up your utility so you have a scram as well. Scrams are pretty helpful, especially considering how many battlecruisers are in the game that have MJDs, battleships with MJDs, anything with an MJD, Pontifexes and stuff. You could basically go up to those things, ram them, use your scram, and kill them straight up with rapid lights. It's just very common in the game right now for things to have it. And also, considering the way carriers were balanced, and I guess now they've been nerfed, but if we're going to have another 100 MN meta, it might be worth having a web just so you can slow down 100 MN ships. It's just worth thinking about. Obviously, with rapid lights, you're a straight up anti-support ship, and you're able to project more damage per reload than the Caracal, which we'll go over later. And finally, with the rigs. I don't think these rigs are necessarily correct. I think right off the bat, you could probably do something like this. Put something like some medium bay thrusters so that you can get some more range on your rapid lights. This is really up to you whether or not you want to do it. I would honestly see common fits like something like this is probably more common, but it's up to you. If you're bad like me, you probably want to start with double LSE, but definitely can start considering what it's like to have a scram. Notably, there's a Tech 2 medium newt on here. I'm not a very big believer in the utility newt, but on the Scythe fleet, I think it's pretty necessary. Without investing any fitting mods, you're able to fit a medium newt because rapid lights don't take that much hitting space. And with a medium newt, that's a very significant amount of newting power. It's not really going to newt out anything like those cap stable Tengus or anything like that, but it's significant enough to pull a scram off of you if you run out of rapid lights or something. So this is probably what you should expect from most nanogang corps and most people in your fleet. Something like this. So the things you should probably think about adjusting from the base fit that we had is whether or not you want to have 2 LCs if you want to have a scram, and maybe you probably should have some bay thrusters. But if you just want to be a tanky point that's really, really fast, you can just say screw all that and you can just make it tanky, have a point, have a rapid lights, and just try to help. Okay, so why fly this ship? The Caracal works just fine, doesn't it? Why would you bother with this thing? So something that's worth mentioning, I have the pretty standard anti-support Caracal here, and we can do a quick comparison just to kind of talk about some of the differences between the two. So right off the bat, the Caracal has more range, which is a pretty big advantage of the Caracal. And adding more range to the Caracal, you can get rapid lights to 80k when you have those fleet fits. But something that the Scythe fleet has over it is that the Scythe fleet actually does more damage per reload of the Caracal. Rapid lights fire perfectly fast anyway, and not that it's wasted on the Caracal, but it has a rate of fire bonus. This means that over 20 missiles, while the Caracal will get its damage out more quickly, the Scythe fleet will actually have more damage done because it has a straight up damage bonus. This is pretty much proven in the volley damage you see here in EFT, 991 versus 825. But the biggest advantage of the Scythe fleet is just the ridiculous speed. The Caracal, obviously, this is kind of conservative with 2 medium Tech 1 polycarbs, just to make it cheap. But basically, a rapid light Caracal will go about 2.1 with double nano. With single nano, the Scythe fleet's going 2.6. Basically what that means is, with deflection piloting, and if you overheat, you'll be able to actually run down an interceptor that's trying to align out and get away from you. You'll actually be able, with decent deflection piloting, be able to get in front of him and actually stop him. And if you actually had something like a scram, you'll completely lock him down if you actually close that much distance. This is something the Caracal just cannot do Well, the Caracal is much cheaper, and it's definitely a great ship for what it does. It just doesn't compare to the ability that Scythe fleet has to run in and get points. It's like an interceptor, but just a little tankier. Like once the scepter gets point, the Scythe fleet can come in. It's probably one of the best secondary point ships in the game, maybe outside of like an Omen Navy or an Orthrus. So it's basically, when we're talking about our progression, when we're talking about, okay, you want to go down the rapid light path and you want to fly anti-support, a good way to start thinking about the way you want to prioritize your ships is learning the Caracal first, working your way and feeling very comfortable with getting point and being in position and shooting rapid lights and helping in that way. And then you step up to the Scythe fleet, which has a few more things added on. You got way more speed. You can start getting more aggressive, with your pointing and your utility. You can start messing with your mids and, having lots of fun that way. And then after that, you can kind of step up to the Orthrus. So let's take a moment and just back up, because that was a lot of information. What's the field guide? What's the basic information you need to know about the Scythe fleet? Let's see. Yeah, I wrote a very, very short three lines to help people remember. The Scythe fleet is fast. It's one of the fastest cruisers I can think of. Worst case scenario, these things will be going 3k cold when you're fighting them. And obviously, when you heat them, depending on links and a bunch of other stuff, you can see them going between 4 and 5k easily. Even with 1 nano, the Scythe fleet heated is going 3.8. It's just very fast. But your kind of ram scram nullsec fit is going 4-1. So it's really worth mentioning. The other thing about the Scythe fleet... Oopsie. Okay, let's get this back up. The other thing about the Scythe fleet is that when you have an enemy one, it's probably intending to ram one of your DPS ships like an Oracle, or it's going to ram one of your support frigates. During this period of time, you need to protect your Karases, you need to protect your Oracle. Scythe fleets are definitely going to ram in. They're so fast, it's probably what's about to happen. And finally, as far as scram, worry about if there's a scram, it's almost certain that it has a scram. You should always assume that it does. It has a lot of mids, and there's so many ram scram fits. Even nano gang fits, a lot of pilots will probably fit one. So you'd have to keep that in mind when you're pointing it. It's pretty dangerous to be an interceptor anywhere near a Scythe fleet. With rapid lights, newt, and probably a scram, it's a pretty quick way to meet your end. I hope this helps people understand the Scythe fleet, and maybe have fun flying it. If you guys have any questions, obviously feel free to ask me. Thanks.